This is day 22 of the 30-day Excel challenge. And this is about data visualization part 2. So back on day 5, we talked about what charts to use for data visualization, like bar charts, line charts, and so on. So it was more about picking the right visuals. But today, we're talking about how to design dashboards that actually tell us what we need to know. So in other words, dashboards that communicate insights. Here's the truth, right? Slapping charts on a dashboard is not data visualization. At least it's not good data visualization. It's data decoration. Real data visualization is about communication. What can the user learn from the dashboard? And the contrast between a good and bad data visualization reminds me of the difference between a baby and an adult. If a baby wants something, they simply cry. And then it's up to you as the adult to guess what they want. So, are they hungry? Are they tired? Does the baby want to cuddle? That's what most dashboards are. More times than not, it's not clear what many of them are actually saying, or it's probably understood by the person who made it and no one else. So the audience may see the visuals, but they don't understand what they're supposed to do with them. And that's not good. But as babies grow, they learn to speak. They use words, and then they can form sentences, and then they start to communicate clearly. And that's the same with a good dashboard. A good dashboard is meant to guide the attention of the audience to the right data points on purpose, and they answer specific questions. Because all of this is just going to help a viewer make a decision easier. So, just like learning to speak, data visualization is a skill and it's going to take time and practice. But you can speed it up if you use the approach correctly. What I've done is I've actually listed 5 design principles or guidelines I like to use when I myself build dashboards. And the first one is keep it clear and simple. What I tell myself is if my chart needs a paragraph to explain it, then I've probably lost my audience. The thing is, your dashboard shouldn't need to be explained if it's good enough. And I know that's going to hit a few nerves. But you need to understand that it should be able to communicate one or more clear insights without forcing your users to figure out what it's trying to tell them. So think of it like this, right? Every element on the screen is either helping your audience to understand the message or it's getting in the way. And that's why you need to strip away the noise and only highlight areas that help communicate the insights. So one way to do that is by increasing your data ink ratio. Data ink ratio is basically how many pixels on the dashboard actually shows the data versus how many pixels are on the dashboard in total. A low ink ratio means your chart is cluttered and bloated. So, it's filled with borders, or there's 3D effects, there's an overuse of shadows, and that fluff isn't going to help anyone. Now, a high data ink ratio means most of your visuals are used to display the actual insights. So you're applying simple formatting, you're highlighting the key insights, and you're only showing what matters. The goal is to increase the data ink ratio when designing the dashboard. So you want a high data ink ratio, not a low one. So the simple way to boost your data ink ratio is to simply just remove guidelines where you can, unless they serve a clear purpose. Ditch the unnecessary borders and outlines. Do not use 3D effects and shadows. Avoid gradients and clip art style icons and cut out any redundant elements. So things like category labels and a legend that's basically showing information that's already on the visual itself. So the key is to ask yourself, if I remove this, will it change the meaning in any way, shape, or form? The key thing to do is to remember you're not a decorator. You are a communicator. I want to explore a couple of examples, right? We'll look at one bad one that doesn't align with the design principle. So this one right here. And we're going to look at another good one that does. The good one that does is what we're going to build together. So get ready for that. So at the moment, we have this data set. Now, this is a simple data set about a startup. This lists the different teams they have and how many engineers belong in each of their teams. And we have this 3D chart that's visualizing this data. So at first, it looks cool, it looks all right, but it's actually doing a terrible job at communicating what the actual insight is. So if you were to ask me what is wrong with this visual, the first thing I'll tell you is the 3D effect is actually distorting the size of each of the slices here. So it's actually making it hard for us to judge the proportions correctly. And all the colors are quite bright and saturated. So it almost feels like they're fighting for my attention at once. There isn't any real clear focus here. And the slices are exploded unnecessarily. So it's harder to scan now. So it doesn't look great. And the use of the shadows, it doesn't seem to add any real meaning to the visuals. So that's what actually makes it look more like a decoration to me. To prove that I'm not over critiquing this thing, if I also ask you to rank which team has the most engineers, just based on looking at the visual, you're probably going to have to stare at this for a few seconds and compare the slices, and you'll still be unsure because this yellow slice looks similar to this one, but at the same time, you don't want to make guesses here. So you'll still be unsure. That's too much work for the viewer. So we need to make a visual that makes the insight obvious. And we do not want it hiding behind special effects. So let's create a visual that actually keeps the message clear and simple. So I'm on a new tab and we have the same data set here. What we're going to do is we're going to use a horizontal bar chart because that's going to make it easy to compare the different categories next to each other. And that's going to allow us to see which team is the biggest instantly. So the first step is highlight your entire data set and then go to the Insert tab and then click on Insert Column or Bar Chart. So we are going to select the horizontal bar chart. Excel calls this the clustered bar. So just select that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort this from smallest to largest. And then I am going to remove the grid lines because I want to increase the data inc ratio. I mean, when you think about it, it's not actually adding any value. So it was just taking up space. We can already compare the bars visually ourselves. So we don't need the grid lines to help us with that. And plus, we want to direct attention to the bars themselves. So now let's just edit the title. So this is going to be head count by team. And that's going to set the context immediately. So a good title will tell the viewer what they're looking at without them needing to guess it. And just like that, we know which team is the largest and which team is the smallest. And all we really did was just to remove the distractions and the message just became clearer. So we know that the backend team has the most members or the most engineers in their team. And the DevOps team has the lowest amount of engineers in their team. The backend team is the largest team. The DevOps team is the smallest team. Number two, use color and text intentionally. Color inside the dashboard should guide the user to what matters in the data. But most people use it randomly. It's everywhere, it's distracting. You don't need thousands of colors. All you need to do is you just need to use 2 or 3 the right way. So one of the things you want to do is you want to use bold colors, right? To highlight the key insights. And then you want to use colors like gray or silver or even softer tones to show the context. Okay, so that means you're directing attention away from the data points you're coloring in this case. And I'm going to show you exactly how we can do that. You also want to use colors in a way that's familiar to people. So you want to use green to represent progress. You want to use red to represent failures or issues. So don't change what colors mean. If people are familiar with this color for this context or for this situation, just keep it that way. Here's an important point as well, right? You don't want to rely on color alone because some of your users may be colorblind. Others may be working in an environment that has poor lighting. So you want to try to use colors and text as well. So you want to try and use colors and text in the right way. And I'm not just talking about labels. So you want to use subtitles, you want to use tooltips, you want to use annotations, and all of these should explain what's happening inside the charts. So what you want to do is you want to use what's necessary to reduce how much guessing your user needs to make. The less guessing they have to do, the better you're doing your job. Let's look at another example. We are looking at how many features each team planned that were actually delivered last quarter. As you can see, we have another horizontal bar chart. So yes, there are no grid lines, which is good. And yes, it has a clear title. The problem is these colors are just distracting. It's like the colors are fighting for our attention. They're not working together to guide our attention. You have DevOps. So if I just click on DevOps, DevOps is covered in red, but we're not sure why. I mean, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? The reason why I'm asking is because DevOps is the one with the highest completion rate. And data team, they're the ones with the lowest completion rate. And yet they're marked in green. So is that what the product team wants? Do they want to celebrate the teams with the least features shipped? And do they want to punish the ones who have delivered the most? So as a viewer, I'm already confused. Imagine other viewers who are looking at this. So let's actually fix this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight our data set, go to insert, and then we are going to insert column or bar chart. And once again, we're going to select the clustered bar chart or the horizontal bar chart. Now, I'm going to apply colors with intention. And the first thing I'm going to do, if you know me by now, is I am going to remove the grid lines. I'm going to select the cells. I'm going to right click this, and then I am going to click on fill. Now I'm going to use the color gray or silver if you prefer. And then I am going to select the DevOps bar, and I'm going to select a bold color. So I'm going to actually select, let's go with, I think I'm going to go with green. Let's see, that's too bright. Let's try this green. Or should we try this one? So, okay, we'll select this one. So right away, I'm telling the viewers where to look. I'm telling them to focus right here because this is the highest performer. And the grayed out bars, these ones are still helping. They're playing their role by helping the viewer to ignore the irrelevant bars for now, but they're still providing context. The next thing we need to do is we need to add data labels. So select the bar and then under the chart design tab, go to add chart elements right here and then go to data labels. And I like to use the inside end. So select that. So let's make this data label. I'm going to select the DevOps data label. Let's try that again. Let's make this white. So let me just right click that. And then you can actually click on format data label too. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on text options. And then I'm going to change the color of this to white. And then let me even expand the font size. We can actually see the actual values for each bar, and we don't need to rely on the axis anymore. That reduces the effort our eyes take to scroll down the axis. So instead of looking at a bar and then looking down on my axis, I can simply look at the data points I need on the bar right there. Let's update the title, right? Let's make this a bit more descriptive. So let's say, which teams delivered the most features? And then we can express that as a percentage. And then perhaps, let me just zoom out a little bit. Let's expand this a bit. And then let's also add a subtitle that answers the question for the user straight away. So I'm going to go to insert. Let's go to text box. And then we're going to say DevOps completed 91% of their planned features. That was the highest among all teams. Let me just expand that. And then I can just put that underneath here. Let's see what that looks like in italics. Okay, so the title asks a question that guides the viewer's attention on finding the answer. So someone will look at this, they'll read the question, and they're scanning through the visual to find that answer. But the subtitle answers the question right away. And in fact, it's actually removed the guesswork from the viewer. So there's no assumptions. We've just given them the answer straight away. So the visuals are just there to tell what's happened and why it matters. And it actually doesn't need any further explanation. So the final step is just to remove the clutter. Let's say goodbye to the axis. All that's left is just the insight. So the team that have delivered the most features is clearly the DevOps team, and they were able to ship out 91% of the features they planned. And that was followed by the back-end team, and they delivered 78% of the features they planned. So the focus is clearly on the top team, and the other bars are just there for context. But at the same time, they're not taking attention away from the main message. We're no longer using color to distract, we're using color to guide. And that's the most important thing here. Number 3, use the right chart for your data. We already covered this principle on day 5. So we spoke about the most common chart types and how to use each one and when to use them. So if you do want to refresh on this, jump back to day 5 to revisit the walkthrough. But the core idea for this principle is that the best chart is not always the fanciest one. It's just the one that gets your message across the fastest. So when choosing a chart, what you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what's the one thing I want people to notice here? Then it's your job to pick the chart that shows that clearly. It's not always going to be the one that looks impressive. Sometimes you may find yourself repeating the same chart. As long as it gets that message clearly to your user, that's all that matters. But if you ever get stuck with this, because I know it can be a bit of a challenge, then you can use a tool that's called Tableau's Visual Vocabulary. It's basically a cheat sheet that helps you decide on the right visuals and when to use them. I'm going to leave it in the description below. Number 4, follow a logical layout or dashboards. Your dashboard should be easy to flow through. If the user has to bounce their eyes across the screen trying to figure out what's important, then you've lost them already. Your job, right, is to guide their eyes to the important data points. For those of you that have ever read a newspaper, if you've read the front page of a newspaper before, right, your eyes naturally scan in one of two directions at first. It's either from top to bottom or from left to right. And that's because the layout is designed to guide you in the natural order that's easy to follow. Your visuals should do the same. Guide the user from left to right, from top to bottom. The thing is, right, if you design the layout of your dashboard correctly, then your users are going to be able to absorb the insights in the right sequence. So let me show you another example. So now our startup has released 4 new pilot features, and they've released it to small groups of users. So what we've done is we've tracked how well these pilots are doing. And now we want to visualize all the key performance signals inside a single dashboard. So this is our data, and this is our dashboard. So this is an example of a dashboard that's cluttered on purpose to show you what not to do. So what on earth is wrong with this? There's no logical flow. The charts are just scattered all over the place. And there's actually no real natural reading path. I'm forced to just bounce my eyes across all these different dashboards at the same time. And some of these visuals are overlapping each other. As you can see, this one is overlapping the middle one. The top left is overlapping the middle one too. And the bottom right is also overlapping the middle one. So the middle one is just suffering right at the bottom of all these ones. And let me not even start on the visuals themselves. But you'd be surprised, right? You'd be surprised on how many dashboards are actually like this. There's no clear structure or flow with this. And that's just going to force the user to do the hard work of trying to make sense out of all of this. Let's fix this step by step. What we want to do is we want to design it so that it flows naturally from one insight to another. So step one, you need to think about your users first. When you're designing a dashboard for users, the first thing you need to ask is, what does my audience need to know first? In this scenario, because we're designing for a product manager, they will probably want to know things like what the top performing feature is, which ones are struggling, how are users responding to this, or how are users responding, and did they point out any concerns? So out of all those questions, which one do they need to know first? So the answer to this should either go at the top or the left side of the dashboard. And then step two would be decide on what insight goes where. So the next thing you need to figure out is the visual flow of the dashboard. And to do that, you now need to ask the simple question of, in what order do I want my audience to absorb the insights? So for us, we want to guide the users in a natural sequence. So we want to start from summary to details to concerns. So let me actually break this down for you. The first one will be the top left. So this will be the first section your audience will look at. So optically, this will also be the first thing they care about. The product manager would like to know which feature won. So the moment they open the dashboard, they should be able to see that immediately. So we'll put the top performing feature somewhere there. Number two will be the top right. So this will be the next section your users' eyes will move towards. But once they see the top feature, they would likely want to compare it with other features. So let's have the retention rate here, and we can sort it from the highest all the way down to the lowest. So that's basically going to tell us which features performed best among the users and which ones performed the poorest. The next component, so component number three, will be the bottom left. So now we want to understand how the users found the features they tested. So we want to see what they feed back to us. So let's have their feedback scores out of 10 in this section. And then finally, component number four will be the bottom right. So this is going to be the part your users' eyes will fall on last. And we'd like to close this with the issues our users faced. So we want to highlight what parts of the experience they didn't enjoy or that they struggled with. So that we can go back, we can investigate, and then just iterate upon that. The reason why this works, right, is because what we're doing is we're starting with the positives. So that's what's winning and why it matters. And then we're looking at how the users feel. And then we close with some of the technical concerns that the user had. Because there's a clear narrative, the user actually doesn't have to struggle to understand what's going on. So we've done the hard work for the team. That's what a good dashboard is meant to be about. Enough talking, and let's get to actually building the dashboard. So the first step of building the dashboard would be to add the scorecard. In fact, before we add the scorecard, let's add the title of the dashboard. Features experimented by users. And then I'm going to merge and center this so that it appears in the center. And then I'm going to expand this because it's a title. Let's make it nice and bold. That should be okay for now. So the first thing we're going to do is to add the scorecard. We're going to go to the Insert tab, and then we'll go to Shapes, and then I'm going to click on, let's go for the rounded rectangle or rectangle rounded corners. And then let me just expand that. So we're creating a scorecard because the first thing we want to do is show the feature that's performing the best. So we want to do that. We want to show their name. We want to show their score. So let's actually go for a purple fill. So let's go for purple. For us to build this scorecard, what we need to do is we need to build the logic that's going to power this scorecard. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to create helper cells. And these helper cells are actually going to go on the same sheet as the dashboard itself, but we're going to hide away from the viewers. We're going to scroll all the way to the right. And don't worry, I'll show you how this works. So we need a couple of things, right? What we need to do for the scorecard, we're going to need the highest retention rate. Also going to need the name of the feature. And we're also going to need the message of the scorecard itself. So let's say full scorecard message. Now, how do we get the highest retention rates? We're going to use the max function. And then we're going to go to where our source data is. So we're going to click on example for source data. And then I'm just going to select all the values within the retention rate field. That's it. I just hit enter, and there we have it. Now I need the name of the feature that has the highest retention rate. So how would I do that? I'm going to use the index match operation. So if you don't know how index match function works, the index function will help us return what's inside a cell, and the match function will show us the position of a cell. We have actually covered this in our 30-day Excel challenge. So go through the syllabus and have a quick run through on that lesson there. So I'm going to type index, and then I go back to my source data, and then I select all the values within the feature column, hit comma, and this time we're going to use our match function. Let's just type match right now. And then I go back. So the first argument in the match function is going to be this. I'm basically telling the match function, this is what you're going to find. This is the lookup value. So you need to use this value to find the feature name. Now, where exactly are you going to look for that? That's the next argument. So I go back to my source data. Then I select all the values in the retention rate. It's going to be one of these values. And I want an exact match. So I'm going to type 0 as the next argument. And then I close the match function with one bracket, and I close the index function with the next bracket. I hit enter, and there you have it. So dark mode is the feature with the highest retention rate. Now, the final thing we need to do is we need the full scorecard message. So this is what's actually going to appear inside the scorecard itself. How do I go about doing that? The first thing I want is I want the top feature showing. And then I'm going to add a space there. Well, actually, let me add the colons, and then I'll add a space. Then I close that with double quotes. And then let me add a space, and I type in the AND operator. Hit space again. And then I'm going to type in char. And what this is going to do is, it's actually going to help me break into a new line. You're going to see how important this is in a sec. Then I hit the AND operator again, hit space just for readability. I want to make sure that the formula is readable. And then I'm going to click on Y2 because we want the feature showing. And then I hit space again, hit the AND operator, hit space again. And then I want to break into a new line again. And then and just the space, and I want retention rate, then space, then close that with double quotes, then space again, then and then we're going to use text, then x. It's going to be x2 because that's where the value is, comma, and then it's going to be, I think it's 0 percentage. So that's going to help me format this as a percentage. Then close bracket. Hope I'm doing this right. Let's hit enter. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so let me just scroll to the right. Interesting. Okay. Let me see if, let me actually see if I can just simply, let me see if I can just simply just display what's inside X2. Let's try X2 just like that. What does that look like? Okay, yeah, so I can do that. And then I do, and let's say percentage sign. Okay, yeah, I'll take that. So yeah, we don't need the text function. Okay, cool. So what I now need to do is I need to scroll all the way back, and then I need to click on this shape here, and I'm going to go into the formula bar, and then I'm just going to click on equal sign, and then I go all the way back, and then just equal that to my message. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so there we have it. What I need to do is I need to just center that. I need to align it to the center. Let's make it a little bit smaller too. And then let's make the text white. Awesome. Perhaps we need to also break the retention rate itself into a new line. And I need to correct the spelling of retention rate. So let me do all of that. In fact, let me just sort the spelling now. Retention rate. And then I need to break this into a new line. So I need to add chart 10 and then add another and. So let me just see what that looks like quickly. Okay, that's good. So 87% is now on the new line. What I need to do is I now need to add the line break between dark mode and retention rate. So let me just do that. I'll just go here and add char 10 and then add an and sign. Let's see what that looks like. I'm just gonna keep expanding this. Okay, there we have it. So now we know our top feature is dark mode, retention rate is 87%. So remember, this scorecard is serving one purpose, and it's trying to answer the most important question immediately somebody sees this. And the question we're answering here, which feature performed best? So this is going to set the tone for the other insights we're still going to show our viewers. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to show how much the other features were adopted by the users. So we're going to do this by showing a horizontal bar chart, and that's going to show the adoption rate by the features. So let's go back to our source data and let's select column A and column C because we want the features and we're doing it by the adoption rate. Go to insert, then go to insert column or bar chart. And then we're going for the horizontal bar chart. So let's just cut that and then go to our dashboard, paste that in. So I'm just going to remove the grid lines and then I'm going to select all the bars and I'm going to go to series fill and then I'm going to color all of this in gray so that we're diverting attention to the main one here. And then this is going to be colored in purple. So we're maintaining a consistent color theme. I think we should expand. Let's actually reduce the gap width. So the space between each of these bars, let's see if we can reduce that. Let me just drag it. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Tell you what, let's see if we can aim for, let's say 70. What does that look like? Okay. Okay, we'll take that for now. And then we need to add data labels. So let's go to chart design and then add chart element and then go to data labels and then go to inside end. If you want, you can try outside end and then we can delete the axis. I think having them inside end, I think I have a bias towards it. I'll admit to that. So let's do inside end for now. And then we'll just change this one to white. So let's go to text options, go to color, and then click white. And then we can expand the size of the font. So now, visually, we're ranking the features. And any user that wants to scan this quickly is able to do that. And that's because of the way we've used the colors and the data labels. So they can get a full picture of this in a glance. The next thing we need to do is we now need to show how many issues were reported by the users for each feature. So for this one, we can use a column chart to compare the number of issues that were raised. So let's go back to our source data. And this time we're going to select A for the features and E for the bug reports. So these will be the issues that the user has raised or the users have raised. Then we go to insert, and then we go to insert a bar chart. And then we're actually going to select the clustered column this time. So we grab that, we go back to our dashboard, and then we paste that in. And then just so that it follows the same theme throughout our dashboard, we're going to use the same colors for this one. And so that we're using a consistent color theme, we're going to use purple and gray once again. So I'm going to select all the bars in here, and then I'm going to first color everything in gray, and then I'm going to select the feature with the most complaints, and then turn that into purple. I'm going to remove the grid lines to remove visual clutter. And then I'm going to now add data labels by going to chart design, add chart element, data labels, and inside end. And then I'm just going to select the data label inside offline mode. I'm going to go to text options, go to color, and then select white, and then go to home tab. And then I just increase the font size. Let's say I'll go for 12. So I can remove the y-axis because we don't need it here. We have the data labels telling us what we need to know. And that's pretty much it. So we've managed to show the pain points each user has, and we've also highlighted the feature that has the most problems with it. And as you can see, I've used color to also visually downplay the others. So now the focus is on the main feature with the most complaints. So that's going to force us to prioritize this main feature above the others. Last but not the least, we need to show how the users felt about each of the features. So we're going to use another horizontal bar chart, similar to this one. So let's go back to the source data. So let's select feature, and we're going to select average feedback score out of 10. Then we go to insert tab, and then we're going to insert another horizontal bar chart. So let's grab that, paste that in. So let's actually, what we can do is we can just drag this, let's say, so we can drag this here. Would it make sense for us to do that? It's too long, isn't it? Let's tell you what, let's do this. What we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that the merge and center stops at column N. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay, let's make it stop at O. Then what we can do is we can make this smaller. So we're just rearranging how we're presenting our data. So we're expanding that a bit. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to now color in our bars. So let's go to format data series and other series option. We click on fill, and then everything should be set to gray. And then we select the bar with the highest feedback score on average. And then we're going to fill that with purple. After that, we remove the grid lines, and then we remove the x-axis, and then we select the bars. We go to chart design, and then add chart element, click on data label, and then we select inside end. Then we select the data label for the highest feedback score bar, and we're going to turn that to white so that it stands out. So let's click on text options, go to color, go to white, and then go to the home tab and just increase the font a little bit. We need to increase the size of each of the bars. So that would mean reducing the gap width. So let's take that down to, let's say, around there, around the 70 mark. Let's do the same for the bug reports. So let's see what that looks like. What we can do to just round this off is we can actually get rid of the grid line. So let's go to view and then just select out that and then uncheck grid lines. Our visual has no more grid lines in it. And then we can just hide this. So we'll select all these three and then right click that and then click on hide. And what we can do as well is keep adjusting this. We can expand this out a little more. Let's say all the way up to column S. Then just drag this maybe here so that they have breathing room. We don't want them flattered right next to each other. We can actually swap the positions of these. So let's place the feedback score at the bottom left and perhaps the bug report on the bottom right so that we can actually round off with the pain points of the users. So what we have now is we start with a summary and then we advance to comparisons. Okay, so we're now comparing how the different features are being adopted. And then we can now understand how the users found the product, so how they felt about each of the features. And then we can now close and finish off with the pain points. So the things that we need to fix and address after this. And there we have it, guys. And that's principle 4 all done. Number 5, tell a story with data. So visuals aren't just for showing numbers. They're actually for saying something with those numbers. And what you need to do is you need to organize those numbers in a way that triggers a user to act. So think about it this way. If you accidentally placed your hand on a hot stove, your nervous system will remove your hand immediately. You're not going to stop and think about it, and you're not going to read a textbook that says how to remove your hand from a hot surface. The pain triggers an automatic reaction, and a good visual should be able to do that too. So when a decision maker sees a red flag or they see a risk rising from nowhere, they move immediately without hesitation. You shouldn't have to explain how to read the dashboard. They just know because you made it that simple. So why mention storytelling? Because we're programmed to respond to stories better than statistics. For thousands of years, right, humans have used stories to share knowledge, to teach lessons, and to inspire action. It's just how we remember things, and it's how we make sense of the world we live in. And this is why the best dashboards are not just showing what's happened, they're leading a viewer through a journey. So here's what happened, here's why it matters, and here's what you should do next. And the thing is, most dashboards fail because they stop at the first step. So they just stop at here's what happened, and they do not go beyond that. But what causes an action to occur in the first place? So for a user to take action, 3 things need to come together at once. And remember, guys, an action will not happen without all these threes happening simultaneously. Number 1, motivation, something that makes them want to act. You show the user something that makes them want to act in the first place. So for example, if you create a dashboard, right, and it's clean, it keeps everything simple, you're following all the design principles, but you're showing the head of HR the top 10 goals Ronaldo scored at Manchester United. The problem is, even though your data is accurate, they're not going to care because it doesn't have any relevance to their job. And you may think that's what they want, but the truth is, they're going to dump your dashboard because it's not going to make their lives easier in any way, shape, or form, even though you mean well. So you need to show them something they care about. Number 2, ability, something that makes it easy to act. You're actually removing friction from anything that they want to do. So let's imagine that they want to do it, but if it's difficult for them to do it, then no action is going to happen. So you want to show them something that has no barriers in the way. It's just a clear path for them. Number 3, prompt. Something that nudges them to act. Think about some of the devices you guys use. If you have a mobile phone and it vibrates, there's a chance you just grab the phone and just read the message, read the notification that comes on. And that's because something has nudged you to act. You want to check it. You can easily check it because you can just grab your phone, and the vibration on your device causes you to pick it up. So you want to create a visual that imitates these principles if you want somebody to act on them. So if your visuals bring these 3 things together, your users will always respond to your insights. Always. If they don't respond to your insights, there's a strong chance one of these elements are missing. One of these components are simply not there because these 3 things have to simultaneously exist for behavior to happen. How do you bring these into your visuals? So the first thing you need to do is first start with a question. So ask yourself, what does our user urgently need to know? Have conversations with them because they're going to help you spot what information they're missing that could actually make their jobs better. And then you can now design a solution that delivers the insight to where they are. The next thing you want to do is build the evidence. So if the solution ends up being a dashboard, what you need to do is you need to answer the most important question clearly with it. So for example, if the question is which content format is costing us the most, but converting the least? You need to now build a visual that answers that question. And that's going to have to be one that makes all the gaps obvious. So it could be a bar chart, and the bar chart can compare different content formats that you're testing. And it can have how each one is performing in terms of views or clicks or whatever's important to the user. The goal is to choose a visual that stops users from guessing the answers to these questions, because your goal is to reduce how much effort it takes for them to know what's going on. And then number 3 is to show what matters. This part brings together everything we've covered in the last 4 principles. Keep your message simple, keep it clear, use colors to guide your viewers' eyes to what matters, use text, use layout to reduce any cognitive load. Anything that will help them reduce figuring things out on the dashboard. Strip away any noise that gets in the way. But you have to be very intentional at this stage. Every single pixel on the screen should have a job. See this step as you removing the friction between the user and the insight. So number 4, add emotional weight. So this is now where the work of the dashboard ends. And now you're interpreting the visuals to your users. So once you're clear on the insights, right, help your users feel what's at stake. And you can do this by asking, what does this insight mean for the business? What do we lose if we do nothing? What do we gain if we act now? And then you need to frame those insights through those lenses. So for example, you can say, your short form videos have tripled in cost, but engagement has now dropped by 60%. So if we keep spending here, we'll lose reach and burn the entire budget in 3 months. That's a decision trigger. And you need to create more of that if you want to be a valuable data professional. It's just what it is. So be clear on the positive and the negative things that could happen if your user takes action or they fail to take action. Number 5, make the next steps obvious. This is actually where you remove the final barrier. If you do that previous step correctly, your user wants to respond to that insight immediately. The question you need to ask is, what should the user do after seeing this? Don't assume they'll figure it out themselves. You need to suggest a next step to them. So for example, you can say step 1, pause all paid ads for short form videos this week. Step 2, test out carousel posts across Instagram and LinkedIn. And then step 3, repurpose the top performing content into reels. So if you give them the actions to take and they're both valuable and easy to do, then that's just going to increase the chance of them trying it out. Because the thing is, insights actually don't matter if no one does anything with them. So if you're designing a data solution like a dashboard or report, or even a simple visual, what design principles can help you out? So remember, number 1 is to keep it clear and simple. Remove anything that doesn't help your audience understand the insights. Every single pixel they see must have a purpose. Number 2, use color and text intentionally. Do not, and I repeat, do not decorate with them. Use them to guide attention. You can use labels, you can use titles, subtitles, annotations. All of them should be used to reduce the mental effort that your user has to make in understanding what's going on. And then use the right chart for your data. So it's not about creating the most advanced, fancy, overlandish dashboards. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make the insights obvious. So select the graphs and select the charts that do that. Number 4, follow a logical layout for dashboards. Organize your visuals in the order you want your users to absorb your information. So remember, top to bottom, left to right. And then number 5, tell a story with data. Numbers are not enough to move people, but stories do. Highlight the risk and the rewards that are possible and the decisions that bring them to life. And then what you want to do is you want to guide your users to take the next best action that makes sense to them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings a close to data visualization part 2. If you do want to practice applying everything we've covered, you need to check out the GitHub link in the description of this video, and you're going to find a workbook that you can practice with. Stay blessed.